of Indiana County. 101.1 FM and AM 1160 WCCS.
Oh, we're going to do catch-all with Dr. Ralph May here today because we've got a lot of things to talk about with him on this sunny Monday morning. Yeah, sunshine outside, and Dr. Ralph May joins us to talk a little bit about, well, sometimes it isn't always sunny here in Indiana County in the wintertime or anywhere else. Our visit this morning presented by Marcus & Mack, voted best law firm and best personal injury lawyer 3 years in a row on the Best of Indiana County contest. Visit them online at marcusandmack.com. I did want to talk with you about that, and I also want to talk a little bit about, Luigi the shooter. Right. And all of that situation. So two entirely different topical areas this morning. Let's start with what people might be feeling at this time of the year when they've had too much winter.
Too much winter is always a difficult thing. I mean, we talk about seasonal affective disorder, which is the form of depression that comes from when the light is lower, when we have not as many days of light, the light during the day is less, and so that triggers certain people into periods of depression where you get that. We used to call it hibernation syndrome, where the person just loses energy, they just don't want to do anything, they don't feel like anything makes them feel any better, and they gain weight, eat too much sweets and bad things for you, and so that adds to the problem. So seasonal affective disorder we know is a version of depression. Not everybody gets it. During the wintertime, we all get kind of sluggish and, don't get as much motivation, but seasonal affective disorder occurs as a legitimate form of depression. We know that light exposure for this kind of depression, natural light exposure, even being outside 15, 20 minutes in natural clouds even, is still better than no natural light at all. Or if you really can't get outside, getting high-intensity light machines to get exposure like 20 minutes a day can really help mediate that kind of depression.
Sun porches are something that I think are really, really effective as well.
They are. Any kind of natural light exposure. We even talk about this on the days like today when it's sunny. You can look out on Philadelphia Street from here, and you can see the sky is blue. It's cold, but it still feels better. It just feels better when the sun is out. And so you can get any kind of exposure like that. It's going to help you.
Yeah. So that is one way to approach it and probably the most important way.
Right.
But activity is also a big thing, isn't it?
Absolutely. We know that when people, and you don't have to be, a marathoner, but general activity, physical activity like walking, exercise, even indoor exercise, by the way, has a tremendously powerfully positive effect on mental health. People who exercise regularly, we're finding, have lower incidence of depression. And when they do get depressed, they tend to be able to endure it better. There's a greater level of resilience. We're finding that exercise, by the way, and since I retired, I'm making sure that I'm being much more routine with some weight training and some strength training as well as some aerobic exercise. It has a mediative effect on the development of dementia even. We're finding that strength training, resistance training, doesn't mean you have to go pump iron and be Arnold Schwarzenegger, but resistance training has a mediative effect on many illnesses, degenerative disc disease, arthritis, dementia. So we're finding that this kind of routine exercise at all times of the year, but particularly during the winter, can be very powerful.
Yeah, those are things that we need to pay extra special attention to. We also need to be watching the people around us for signs that they're in trouble. Absolutely.
Now, particularly males don't like to talk too much about how they're feeling. They just want to tough it out. But anyone, you reach a point where you're worried about the persons with you. They may be more withdrawn. They may be oversleeping. They just may be not themselves. When I say not themselves, it's a change in behavior where they're just not as outspoken, not as motivated. They may be withdrawing more. And when you see that in a partner or a friend or a colleague, what you want to do is address it and say, look, I see that something's bothering you. I can just see it on your face. I can see it in what's going on. Let's just talk about that a little bit. Inviting people into that conversation, even if they seem like they don't want to talk, is really important.
And always seeking professional help is an option that everybody should consider, even though there seems to be a stigma attached to it.
Well, the stigma is not as bad as when I started in the profession 45 years ago, but it's still pretty bad. The idea that the brain isn't a part of your body, the brain can develop problems. It's an organ just like any other organ of your body, like your heart, your liver, your kidneys. And so the brain can develop things like depression, anxiety, very common. And the statistics haven't changed in many years. 25% of American adults experience a level of anxiety, depression, or mental health disorder that reaches the level of the need of treatment. 25%. 1/4 of the population of the United States. That's about 60 million adults. And children is 20%. So you're still looking at a tremendously large number of people who are suffering unnecessarily.
Yeah, it's amazing. All right, so I wanted to touch upon that, but I really wanted to get to the subject today of violent behavior in society and our reaction to violent behavior,
Right.
which the situation with Luigi, the shooter in New York, who took the life of a guy, a healthcare executive, sneaked up behind him, shot him, and was finally captured in Altoona. That whole situation, he became a national celebrity,
Right.
and it's it's disgusting the way that
Right, right.
that has taken place. But let's talk first about the violent behavior and people taking things into their own hands, and how that is becoming more and more of a problem. And I don't know if it's because we're hearing more about it, or because people are actually doing it more. Their violent behavior has always been around,
Always been around.
but it seems especially difficult now. The number of violent shootings in America already in these first 4 weeks of the new year, we're at a record pace.
Well, we talk about the temperature of society, right? The level of discourse, the level of agitation, the level of where the rhetoric, the people talking with one another. This is just my pontification. Is I think we've lost a little bit of respect for one another.
Yeah.
The way we talk to one another, we talk about one another, and again, I'm not blaming social media, but social media amplifies the good and the bad. Social media can be a tremendous resource of good, but it also amplifies whatever you want to say, you say, and it's suddenly thousands of people are seeing it. It amplifies things. It creates a kind of a fuel for an underlying level of concern. We know that the level of anxiety and the level of depression in society has gone up over the past several decades. Mm-hmm. Now, why? There's a lot of debates about why. Are there changes? Are we identifying people more? Or is just the environment worse? But we know that that's worse. And so people are kind of on a level of agitation that they haven't been before, a level of kind of being kindling, like smoking a little bit. The fires are smoking a little bit. And it doesn't take a lot for certain people that are kind of on the edge already, maybe have some vulnerabilities to violence. Mm-hmm. Maybe some of that is inherent, that they're struggling with some type of mental health disorder. And those people are kind of on an edge anyway. And so this extra stuff kind of pushes them off in the direction of acting on violence. Mm-hmm. And I think in our culture, we've kind of lost a certain amount of, okay, you can feel certain things, but that doesn't mean you should do them. You need to show some judgment, some inhibition, some ability to say, I don't want to hurt people. I don't want to offend people. It's freedom of speech. Freedom of speech comes with responsibility. Freedom comes with responsibility. You have the freedom to do something. That doesn't mean you should do it. Mm-hmm. You need to think about your consequences.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a solid thing, and something that we all know inherently, and yet people do go over the edge, as they say, and deciding why that is happening is the hard part, because it's different for every case.
Different for every case. We do know, though, like, for instance, let's take suicide. Suicide, at any given point in time in the United States, 13 million people are thinking about taking their own lives. 13 million. Mm-hmm. Now, the suicide rate went down a little bit in 2018. It's gone back up after the pandemic again. We're at about 50,000 people a year die by suicide. At any given point in time, now that's 13 million, think about it, 50 million die by suicide. So at any given point in time, there are the people that are on this edge of wondering if they should be alive anymore. They're depressed. They feel like their life's not worth living. But when forces outside kind of collapse in on them, rejection, pain, just the tenor of the times, that amplifies the risk. And I think that's what we're thinking about. We're thinking about people that are at risk that maybe wouldn't go that direction. They're amplified by things in the environment.
Does violent media play a significant role as well? It's in the movies, obviously, video games. Are we losing the value of life?
There's a desensitization process that occurs even virtually. It's a game. You're playing a game. You're watching a movie. We know. But you get desensitized to the consequences of actions. It seems like it's a normal thing, to just react violently. You have justification. It seems like everybody feels like they have justification, and they're not able to step back and say, no, wait a second here. What's going on here? We need to back away from this edge and look at what's going on. It's hard to do that when you're being kind of ramped up that this is what we do.
Yeah. Now let's talk about the way that society has reacted to it. And again, you use the word amplification. It is easy to amplify in today's society. It's just the tools are there for people to do so. And so guys like this guy, this shooter in New York, they become national heroes. They become celebrities. Right. Some even do what they do because they see the possibility that they could become a big celebrity.
It's an interesting point. It's why when we talk about active shooter situations, we don't like to use the name of the person because we don't want to glorify an action of violence, of destruction. And people will seek it. Now, in terms of what happened with Luigi, he was glorified by this because people know how frustrating it is sometimes to deal with insurance companies. We've all had to have that problem. We've had medical problems. Things get denied. You have to fight with the insurance. I'm a provider. I had to fight with insurance companies for my patients, so I know what that frustration is like. But that doesn't mean you're justified taking violent action against individuals. There are other ways to fight for yourself. You're not justified taking the violent action. Now, I'm interested in, nothing has really come out about this young man, but I'm very interested in this young man's history because it sounds like he was a good guy, had a lot of potential, a lot of possibilities, but suddenly he goes this direction. It begs the question to me is what was going on with him, and what happened to him. And I think the issue of, he should be glorified because he's fighting for the underdog or whatever is missing the point. It's missing the entire point here. This young man has a significant issue or significant problem, so he's going to have to face the consequences of his actions. But this probably isn't about that. It's probably about something else that we haven't heard about yet.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing to me about this whole case is there are so many glorify him because of the action that he did, but there are many that just say he's a good-looking dude, he's a hottie.
Well, yeah,
and that's a whole nother aspect of society that is worshiping this kid.
The thing is with the social media, again, social media and the internet, it's not a bad thing. It's a thing that can be good or evil, is that people can say and do anything they want and not have to look somebody in the eye while they're saying it. I think it would be very different if you have to look at somebody in the eye and say the very same thing you're saying on social media.
Yeah.
If you have to have an actual physical contact with somebody and say the same thing, would you say the same thing if you were looking them right in the eye?
Yeah.
I wonder. I don't think so. I think it creates this kind of environment where it's the Wild West. You can say or do anything because the consequences of it don't directly impact you in the moment.
With that situation there, with the shooter, with anybody who is performing acts of violence, people watch that. They see the amount of adulation that is given to this guy. They say, I want some of that notoriety myself. Others need to be watchful of the people that might be at risk of doing something like that. What should we be looking for in others?
When the person starts to focus their energy on a particular person or area, that this is like becoming an obsession for them. This is like something really ramping them up, and they stay locked into it. They lose contact with their friends, or they start disconnecting from their normal activities. They start focusing solely on maybe a particular internet search, looking for a particular thing. The internet searches often reveal in post hoc in these analyses that the person was obsessing with the individual, obsessing with the theme for a long period of time, and then they'll do searches on how to find them and how to, eradicate them. Yeah. So it's not something that happens impulsively. It usually is something that evolves over time. And we need, by paying attention to the person's behavior, usually they disengage from normal communication and interaction with others, and they focus primarily on the topic they're interested in. So they'll talk with you about this topic, or they will disengage from other important things in their lives.
He is Dr. Ralph May. We're out of time this morning. We could keep this one going for a while.
Absolutely.
All right. So you see the signs in somebody else, you're feeling the signs yourself, get help. It's out there.
Absolutely.
All right. It is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS 101.1 FM, AM 1160, WCCSradio.com. Thanks for coming in today.
Thank you, Tom.
We're going to have him back soon. Right now, we get to Boomer Sports. It's brought to you by S&T Bank. People Forward Banking, 25 after 9 o'clock. It's Indiana in the Morning on WCCS.
Dad, I'm broke.
Hey, broke, I'm Dad.
Dad!
Don't you have cash saved from babysitting?
No, I spent it. I want my own bank account from S&T Bank. They offer free ATMs, online and mobile banking, and an annual scholarship opportunity. See, I'm responsible.
Hey, responsible, I'm Dad.
Visit your local branch or